Go ahead.
And welcome back to Pressbox Live, the baseball talk edition. As promised, the new year has come, and returning to our program with us is Ross Grimsley, along with the managing editor of Pressbox and PressBoxOnline.com, Luke Jackson, and we'll be talking baseball not weekly yet, but pretty soon we'll be back weekly. Probably around March 1st, we'll be back weekly for the next six and a half, 7 months. But I thought it would be a propitious time. That's a big word.
Ooh,
That's a
boy,
big word,
you're
Ross.
showing off.
You think Earl would know that word?
Absolutely not. Not many of us do.
Anyway, I thought it would be a fortuitous time to take a look at what the Orioles and Mike Elias have accomplished during the offseason and see where we see the club heading, what else is left for them to do, and try and take a look at some potential landing spots for an old friend, Anthony Santander. And let's start with that, Luke. Anthony Santander and his agent had some pretty big aspirations. What his 44 home run season would propel him to be able to earn this year. And I don't think he's going to earn that kind of money.
I think you're absolutely correct. I think Anthony came into the offseason thinking, I came off a 44 homer season. I'm going to get a 5-year deal worth between 20 and 25 a year. And that's not going to happen. It's going to be closer to what Teoscar Hernandez got from the Dodgers, which was 3 years and 66 mil. And the reason is that the market tends not to love the kind of player that Teoscar or Anthony is. Anthony brings a lot of power to the table. There's no question about it. I think if you look at extra base hits the past 3 years, he's like fifth or sixth in total
In
extra
all of
base hits
baseball. Yeah.
in all of baseball, behind only guys like Judge and Soto and Ohtani. However, it's not a whole lot of defensive value, no base running value, and so if the bat speed
And not a great deal of on base percentage.
Right, right. And so you're really banking on the power. And if the chase really expands at some point, if the bat speed slips a little bit at some point, you could be looking at a low on base guy who runs into 20 to 25 home runs a year, and that's it. And so that's why he's not going to get 5 years. And so teams want to minimize that risk. I'm sure they're looking at him more as like a 3-year deal type of guy.
Let me ask you a question, Ross. If Luke is right and his price drops that low, which we should be able to earn that 3 years, 66 million. Is there any chance you see the Orioles dipping back into the Santander market, or you think it's a fait accompli? He's going to be elsewhere in 2025 and beyond.
Yeah, they went out and got O'Neill
Right.
and right-handed hitter and Sanchez, which is totally mind-boggling to me. But anyway, but 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 O'Neill, he's a guy that he strikes out a lot. He's hadn't played over 100 games in the last 5 to 7 years. So very possibly Santana would fit right in there. Playing in Camden Yards is a great place for him.
Bruce, Luke, I mean Ross, I got to interrupt you.
I'm
You're still falling
I'm
below.
drooping. I'm drooping.
Yeah, there you go.
I got a floppy screen or something.
Floppy
That's a
camera. All
it's a
right.
disease I think that's easily fixed.
All right.
But anyway, yeah, I think Camden Yards is a great place for him. So I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that they could possibly do something.
Luke, before we move on to what the Orioles have done, do you see any way that if his price starts to drop into that territory, that's kind of what I thought I would have signed him for last year.
Right.
Had they had the money, I would have been like four at 75 to 80.
Truthfully, I think they've probably mostly moved on, which is why they
Yeah.
signed O'Neill. And if Tony signs for 50 plus mil elsewhere, I think they'll be more than happy to take the pick, which will be like
Okay.
the 31st overall pick.
Okay.
However, is there a scenario out there where the Orioles re-sign Tony to a favorable price and they can use Kerstad and flip him for an arm
Yeah.
with control? Perhaps. And, I'm
Okay.
sure that's one of the ideas that they've bandied about in the warehouse.
All right. Now let's jump into what they have accomplished. And Ross, you mentioned Tyler O'Neill, you mentioned Gary Sanchez, and they also picked up two starting pitchers. One, Charlie Morton, on a 1 year contract at 15 million, and the other a 1 year contract for a 35-year-old Japanese hurler, Tomoyoki Sugano. And your thoughts on what they've accomplished thus far?
You look at, I know a lot of people were, having a lot of comments on getting Morton at 41 years old. But you look back, and me and Luke were talking before the show about, investing in a pitcher now is really a chancy type thing, especially with the injuries. The injuries have almost doubled for pitchers since 2015. Tommy John surgeries are up almost 70%. The last since 2015, and the last 7 years, it's up 82%. So that's saying, it's a risky thing to do. And the only way you get, and it all comes because guys trying to throw harder than they're capable of doing and trying to throw the greatest breaking ball of all time, every pitch. And that just didn't work. But now you got Eflin, you have Morton, two guys that are pitchers. They're not overpowering guys. They rely on breaking pitches, and they're pitchers. So I think you might see that trend start to, go towards that at this time. So here's some guys Morton's going to give you 160 plus innings. He's going to give you 33 starts. That is huge for a team. And with Batista possibly, if he can retain or come back to what he was doing, Bradish, Wells, Means, some guys that can help out. But the O's have some guys, some question marks. I think they have question marks everywhere. Is Holiday going to be able to do what he does or what he's capable of doing? Henderson, he led the league and led the baseball in errors at shortstop, which was kind of puzzling. Sanchez, you get him at catching. Now, if he's an upgrade from McCann, I kind of scratch my head because I saw Sanchez years ago. He couldn't get leather on a ball thrown to him, and now he hit some home runs as well as O'Neill. He hit home runs, moving the fence in. They're going to hit some home runs, but they're going to give them up too. So it's a lot of ifs and a lot of question marks. And it should be interesting.
Luke, how do you see the offseason to date?
Yeah, I think it's a continuation of what they've done in the past, where, as Ross mentioned, the risk that you take on by signing really any pitcher to a long multi-year deal. Everything that they do since they've taken over is about minimizing risk. And it's been no different this time around. It's just that with new ownership, they can take bigger swings on 1 year deals. So in other words, with Sugano, that's a $13 million dart throw. Like, I don't know how he's going to do over here. I don't know if the Orioles know for sure how he's going to do over here, but that's something that they wouldn't have been able to do under previous ownership. They wouldn't have been able to make a $13 million dart throw. They wouldn't have given Charlie Morton $15 million for 1 year. It's a 41-year-old right-hander who could fall off a cliff at any time. I assume that the reason that they signed Morton is that after Burns went off the board and decided to stay home in Arizona, they probably thought that the 2025 stat line for Morton was going to be roughly similar to what Flaherty would give them, to what Pivetta would give them, to what Eovaldi would have given them.
Right.
So they went with the less risky option, which was the 1 year deal for Morton, with the risk being that he's 41 years old and he could fall off the cliff.
Yeah.
In terms of Sanchez,
well, like a former general manager of the Orioles, Andy McPhail, and you remember him pretty well, Ross.
Yeah.
He used to say, "There's no such thing as a bad 1 year contract," and that's how I chalk up Sugano and Morton. It's interesting to experiment with those two guys. I think Morton is pretty well proven, as Ross said. He's going to most likely give you 160, 170 innings. Sugano is, as you say, a dart throw, but they're 1 year contracts. The question is, where does this pitching staff gain some stability and longevity where you know what you got for a little while? And does it all fall back, Luke? I'll start with you and then I want Ross, at player development.
Yep.
They've certainly developed, their top prospects are developing nicely, but they 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 almost in a braggadocious way didn't take any arms the first 2 years pretty much. And then when they did, they've traded Baumeister, you know. Um, it does it fall back on development that you got to start to develop some of your own pitching?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely a fair criticism that we are now entering year 7 under Mike's leadership, right? And he has not drafted and developed his own starting pitcher to this point.
Right. Not
That's a
one of
fact.
them. Yeah.
Like Kramer is Dan's guy.
Yep.
Grayson is Dan's guy. And then he traded for Bradish, which was a fantastic trade. He
Great
traded for
trade.
Povich, a fantastic trade. And then he brought in other arms via trade as well, like Burns and Irvin. And he
Right.
signed Gibson, signed Morton, but he has not drafted and developed his own starting pitcher to this point. And that's absolutely a fair criticism. And you look at where this rotation is long term, you almost really need Povich to step up this year and solidify himself as a future rotation piece, because other than that, it's just Grayson and Kramer
Yeah.
as long-term pieces. The rest are on one-year deals. That's Eflin, Sugano, and Morton.
Yeah.
And beyond that, you're still needing that long-term horse that I guess they were in on the Burns conversations
Yeah,
that,
they were in
and
on them. There's no
yeah,
question.
but he wanted to sign home. That's his right. He's a free agent. He can do what he wants. But they're still looking for that long-term horse. Can they still trade for that guy? Sure. But that's expensive.
Let
And
me let me pose a scenario, Ross. I thought about Morton. You know, Morton in his prime, when he really broke through with Houston in the 2017-18 years, he was a horse. I mean, he was a guy who was more like 190, 200 innings and could win you 16, 17 games. I actually think I'm penciling him in. I actually think that Kramer stands a pretty good chance at getting flipped in a deal to bring you a bigger name pitcher. And I think that is the piece I see going in return, perhaps packaged with Mountcastle, get you a Castillo or a Pablo Lopez. Your thoughts?
But very possible. I mean, I look at, it all comes down to, there's going to be injuries. It's just a matter of who they're going to be.
Yeah,
Rodriguez went down with the lat thing. I look for him to come back, hopefully, and be one of the mainstays on this staff. But then you got, and with the tutoring of possibly Morton, being around and being able to rub all like Burns did. Burns was a
yeah.
great a thing on there for the pitchers.
So
But
was Kyle Gibson two
oh
years
yeah,
ago. I think he
absolutely,
had.
and,
Yeah,
that was really good, and that helps. But you get back to what you're talking about with, the Elias came from Houston. They didn't develop pitchers over there either.
right.
So a lot of the same scenarios here as there, where they went out and traded for pitchers, they'd signed free agents, and trading Kramer and possibly somebody else for a frontline guy if you can do that, and maybe throw in another guy. I mean that you're going to have to give up something to get something, and that is something that's very possible that they could pull off, which would be really great. But Bradish, I don't know how close he is. Wells, how close he is. Means, can he come back? But they have like I said, they got a lot of guys. They have a
Well,
lot of question marks.
Means is a free agent. Wells and Bradish aren't.
Okay,
So
well,
Means is
yeah.
no guarantee he's going to be back
and we
with the
haven't heard
Orioles.
much about Means in terms of who has interest. There was
Right.
one Red Sox mention.
Boston
Yeah.
had a little bit of interest, but they kind of moved on
He
it.
just hasn't pitched much the past 3
Yeah,
years.
no, right.
Yeah,
He's been hurt, and to come back after 3 years is really a stretch. But with
Yeah.
the other two guys, Bradish and Wells, good arms, strong guys. How are they going to handle, being injured and bouncing back? But they could, one of those guys comes along, that could really be good. Povich, like you said, he's going to have to do something. but I mean, all these guys can't be in the big leagues. You know,
Right.
somebody's going to have to be.
I will say this, Ross. You mentioned the injury rate. You really want to come into camp with 9 or 10 arms that you're comfortable starting major league games because all
Probably
those
more
guys are
than
going to
that.
start.
I mean, yeah, you
Yeah,
need a
I
lot
mean,
of guys, and
yeah,
it looks like, and they're going and getting some, not I wouldn't say quality guys, 4A guys with major league experience that can step in and possibly come up and help. They need maybe go even deeper into their AA team with guys down there that could come up and do some stuff. But I think. I think a trade for a frontline guy is really a big thing. But again, developing pitchers. They're going to have to find a way to do that. They're not going to go out and spend a lot of money. They got to find a way to keep these guys healthy. That's another big thing, and that's it's like I said, a lot of ifs here, a lot of ifs.
Luke, the Ryan Mountcastle is kind of a real conundrum to me. I'd really like the club to move on from him, and I gotta believe they've sort of put his name out there, and there hasn't been a lot of, you know, grab on wanting what he offers. That's why I think the Kramer thing makes sense to me. But now I'm reading that there's that we might be in talks with, and I'm reluctant to say we might be in talks because it's these PS articles that are all on the internet now. But it was talking about a Mountcastle for Lopez trade, and that really started to make some sense to me, and especially if Kramer would be a part of it.
yeah. I'm a little hesitant to give up Kramer just because I would be hesitant to give up any starting pitching depth at this point. Because, like I said, you're going to need a lot of starters to get through a season. I
Right,
would be more inclined to give up a Mountcastle. He's got 2 years of club control left. I
right.
think he's due to make about 6 or 7 mil in arbitration this year.
This year, right.
And they might want to see if they can juice his numbers with the new dimensions and then move him next offseason, say. I think trading him off of a down year because of the dimensions in left field, maybe that's not something they want to do. But they do have other first base options, Kobe Mayo being one, who's a similar type of player to Mountcastle. And then Ryan O'Hearn is another a
Yeah.
first base option. He provides a little bit different skill set, left-handed hitter, a little more patient, gives you a little more professional at bat. So, um, my guess is that they want to see Mountcastle have a nice season with the new dimensions, and then perhaps deal him before his final year of club control and give Kobe the first base position. That would be
Yeah.
my guess,
See,
but they
I
might
think
they
they
might
run the
need to
I think they run the risk with that scenario that he goes down even further. I
because
see
like
his
as you and I both
because
mentioned,
his the wall to me was not an impediment to his power. What's the impediment of his power is making contact and being disciplined with the strike zone, and he's never shown that.
right. And so I don't know if the new dimensions of left field help him lay off of sliders down and away.
Right? They don't.
I mean,
You saw a lot of that with a lot of guys last year, the second half.
right.
That's when
And
you
I
had a
mean, I
lot of
guess you could argue that the dimensions got in hitters' heads. You would have to ask them.
possible.
You know,
I mean,
it seemed to
So
me that when road hitters came into Camden Yards, the big donkey right-handed hitters like Jose Altuve and Aaron Judge and Giancarlo Stanton, and none of those guys seem to have much trouble with
much
the
trouble
dimension.
hitting home runs.
So,
yeah.
um,
No, but
Um,
O's don't have those kind of guys.
that's true.
You
That's
know,
true.
that's one of the problems.
That's
So
true.
moving to
And
Well,
right
and
field, you
I'll tell you another thing about the left field wall. I remember because I'm around since the ballpark opened in '92. I don't recall when Yusina, McDonald, Jimmy Key, and Scott Erickson were pitching, and Sutcliffe, that they were giving up home runs the way they were with the horseshit pitching they had
hey,
in the mid 2000s.
no, you're
Um,
right. Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
I mean,
that's what that,
Dan
it's
Straley isn't exactly a litmus test for whether the wall was too short or not.
yeah. Well, I tell you what, it will. A lot of pitchers, it will get in their head. You become defensive, and those solo home runs become 2 and 3 run home runs because you walked a guy got on an error or whatever, and then you start picking, and next thing you know, whammo. So it looks to me like they're going for we're going to out bludgeon the other team, and you're not going to get to where you want to go in the postseason by doing that.
All
I
right,
was actually,
we've been remiss at mentioning that we're brought to you by the Costas Inn, and I need us guys. We haven't worked them out in a while, but do I have my thumbs already?
thumbs are up.
All right, the thumbs are up for the Costas Inn. Costas Inn, I read something the other day. It's amazing. The Costas Inn has now been open at the same location there on North Point Boulevard, 4100 North Point Boulevard, for 54 years. Absolutely unbelievable what that Triantopoulos family, and I do say family because it starts with Costas and his lovely wife, and then
54.
yeah,
Holy.
54 years, same location. Fantastic specials Monday through Friday that you can eat, sit down in the dining room or eat at the bar. They're just absolutely fantastic bargains, real good value, steaks, chops, pasta dishes, chicken dishes, anything you want. Fantastic soups and salads. The crab soup is second to none. And then the crab cakes are world renowned at the Costas Inn. And then the steamed crabs, nobody does them better than the Costas Inn. Phone number 410-477-1975. You do need to make reservations for crabs. Find out the price point, the availability, and how many crabs are available for you at the size you want. That's the Costas Inn. Nobody does it better. We give them 6 thumbs up.
Stan, it's worth the ride wherever you live in Baltimore.
That's right.
It's
That's
worth the
right.
ride, believe me.
All right. Let's in wrapping up our next 10 minutes, let's see if we can find some agreement. Do we all three think that Charlie Morton was the end of the line for starting pitching that they will bring in to spring training, or do we all put your thumb up again? Not for Costas Inn. I'm putting mine up that I think they will add another significant starter.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's a good possibility.
Luke is hedging his
Sideways. I'm
what?
sideways right now. I'm not, I just don't know. I
Okay.
think that they will try to add via trade, but I think they'll have limits to what they give up, which is why I think they add Morton as almost like a just in case
Yeah.
they don't
But
add.
it would help to have a
Um,
left-handed starter too, wouldn't it?
yeah, probably,
Well, they got Cade. They
probably.
do have Cade Povich.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
true.
They
Yeah.
do have Cade Povich.
Cade
But
will
he's
make plenty of
I
starts.
mean, I think Cade is going to make 25 to 30 starts this year, and maybe a couple more. And if he puts his big boy pants on, he becomes a really, really important
No, he's
piece.
an important arm to
Yeah,
Are they
this.
no
going to have a
question.
six-man rotation?
I think they will eventually,
Yeah.
maybe not to start the season, uh,
Right.
Yeah,
but
the
because
first
they
month
have
you don't really need it, but
right, and then you have Sagano coming over, who I'm sure is used to pitching once a week.
yeah.
You have Grayson coming off the IL stints last year. You have Kramer coming off a long IL stint last year, and you have Eflin coming off an IL stint last year. And so I think it's very possible once you get going in the season, like May-ish, that they could go to a 6-man rotation. I think that's very possible.
So let's look at one other thing. So Ross, who would you like to see them bring in of the names that are still out there? Flaherty is a free agent. Andrew Heaney is a free agent. But trade possibilities are Luis Castillo, Marcus Stroman, also Pablo Lopez of the Twins, and several others.
Yeah, but you look at the Seattle has a abundance of pitching.
Yep.
I think Miami has some guys that are available that
Well, they
could be.
already traded the guy that I
Yeah,
wanted,
yeah.
Jesus
But I
Luzardo.
think Seattle has some guys that they would be willing to move to get some bats. So I would probably look over in that whoever they can get that would help the staff. But that would be the place that I would eyeball first.
Luke, who would you like to see? I know you're sideways on whether they'll do something, but who would be your number one guy?
Pablo Lopez.
Yeah.
I've had my eye on him really since I saw him live last April at Camden Yards. I like his game. I think that there are some indicators that show that he's going to age well. He's only 28 years old. I, I don't know what it would
How
cost,
many
but
more years does he have of
I
control?
think 3 more years under club control, under team contract, I should say,
Yeah,
because they traded for him from the Marlins and they immediately gave him an extension.
right,
And maybe I don't know if there's a Pablo Lopez from 3 years ago out there where the Orioles could trade for
right.
that guy and give them an extension. We haven't seen a creative move out of this team like that in quite some time. So, but I
Yeah,
mean, that
well,
would be ideal. But Pablo Lopez is a name that I've got my eye on.
Is Cease number two for you?
Yeah, probably,
Yeah,
probably. And you would basically do the same thing that you did with Burns, where
Burns,
you probably overpay a little bit for 1 year of the pitcher, but you do get a draft pick on the back end if he
and a
walks.
potentially more signable pitcher than
He's a
Burns
Boris
probably
guy
was.
as
Yeah,
well.
yeah,
So I mean, he's going to get a lot. He's going to, if he has a big year in 2025, he's going to get a lot of money. He's going to get 200 plus
yeah.
because of his bat missing ability.
All right. One more area. Well, two more areas in our remaining few minutes. Uh, they made two trades at the deadline last year to get Soto and Dominguez from the Phillies. Was that being proactive both to help the team in 24, but also are those the guys that they feel are necessary as insurance if Bautista isn't the mountain that he was 2 years ago? Luke, start with you.
Um, we definitely, we definitely could see some version of Batista that isn't the mountain right
Yeah.
away. We could see like a hill. I
Mm-hmm.
think you've used that term before.
Yeah.
Because is he going to go back to back early in the season? Eh. Is he going to go
Doubtful.
2 inning stints? Probably not.
Yeah.
And so you have Soto and Dominguez, two guys who have closing experience. I think that helps. And if you look at where their bullpen is right now, I think they could use another arm, but I would almost like to see some interesting arms who have options come in. I don't know if I'm all that interested in seeing a 3 or 4 year contract for a reliever to add to this group. I'm more interested at this point in adding some intriguing arms who offer some flexibility.
Okay. All right. Ross, how about you?
yeah, that sounds. It's almost to invest a big contract is just not something in the works that the Orioles are going to do. They just don't do that at this time. Now, maybe that might change in the future, but as of now, you just don't see that happening. And Dominguez and Soto, two power arms, which go Soto left-handed, which is really somebody that they have somebody to another left-hander. Who's the other left-hander in the
They've
bullpen?
got Keegan Aiken, CNL
Aiken,
Perez,
yeah, and
CNL Perez.
the other kid they didn't they let
Coulomb is
him.
gone.
Yeah,
Coulomb's gone.
so it wouldn't hurt to. I
Although
mean,
they could revisit
exactly.
Coulomb before the season
Yeah.
starts. You never know.
Yeah. The bullpen will be
Do
important.
you
Yeah.
think they need Luke, give me a name or two of these guys that have options. I
I
mean,
don't
do
know.
you
I don't know.
okay. Okay. You just want some more flexibility.
I
Where does Chase McDermott fit potentially in
He could
this?
fit. He's got plenty of options remaining. He's a talented kid. He's probably a reliever long term.
Yeah.
And I think he could absolutely fit in the bullpen. I think that they want to see it through with him as a starter first. And I think they'll give him a chance to compete as a starter in camp. And I would be surprised if he doesn't get a longer leash as a starter before going to the bullpen. But I think long term, his future is in the bullpen if he's
And
not traded.
and Ross, there's all this talk. We know about the situation with Bradish. It sounds like Wells could possibly be ready earlier than Bradish. I don't think his surgery was as extensive as Bradish's TJ surgery. Is Wells in your mind finally right for the bullpen rather than thinking you're going to get 100+ innings out of him and
Yeah,
25 strikes.
he's a big power guy, and
Yeah,
he showed that he can pitch effective out of the bullpen. He closed, a
yeah.
little bit. So that's a plus. But I mean, some of these guys, are going to be a couple of them working for spots on the staff, and if they don't get it, it's not going to be that big a thing because they're going to go down. They need people to go down and get some innings, especially starters that can come up and fill a spot for guys that possibly go down or for whatever reason can't, aren't effective or can't pitch because of injury. So there's going to have to be some guys that are going to have to be able to get some innings, even in spring training. This is going to be really interesting. Guys are going to need to get innings. There's going to be B games. There's going to be split squads to get guys innings to,
Mhm.
be able to be effective to start the season and give some innings and not wear the bullpen out because
One
that's been a problem.
one last area I want to ask you. When you look at this team, and I know it wasn't like a long run to greatness or even real goodness, but the last couple years, it seemed like last year going into the season, I had so much confidence in the prospects we had getting ready, Mayo and Holiday and Kerstad. And I had so much confidence in O'Hearn and somewhat Mountcastle, Rutschman, Santander, Mullins, Hayes. This club seems to me like offensively, it's got a lot of, I won't call them holes, but it's got a lot of question marks. Ross, you agree
No,
or disagree?
no, I said it at the beginning. There's a lot of question marks on this year with the
And the
pitchers with some.
biggest being Rutschman to me,
Oh,
you know.
well, he went from now, and again, I don't know if he was hurt the
Yep,
second half and didn't say nothing, or nothing was said to anybody, but he went from when he first got the big quality catcher, he was an old school kind of guy, but then he started going to the one knee crap,
right.
and it affected everything,
How do you
and
feel about that one knee thing?
That's ridiculous. I mean, it's some people can do it, but you don't do it with men on base. And you're trying to get a low strike. Most people throw the ball up in the zone and get the strikeout. So I mean, you're doing something that's totally asinine for me and for you. I talked to Bench. I've talked to a lot of guys, and they just kind of shake their head. And it's something. And he started doing it, and he's a totally different receiver.
Yeah.
I just don't see it. I don't see the benefit of it. There's more risk than reward, I think.
All right.
You
Where
really
is
think, Ross?
Huh?
where
No, no.
so where is that
I love to
spot?
get started on some of this stuff.
Luke, where's that spot? Like if you had one offensive player you could still add to this team. Is anybody out there that intrigues you? Say a Jurickson Profar, you know,
Well, intriguing. I mean, there's this guy who hit 44 home runs last year. Good fit at Camden Yards. Profar, because of the versatility, he can
on
play a
base
couple
percentage
can
too.
play a couple different spots. You're hoping that he's ditched the every other year stuff in terms of his production.
Right.
Um, but I think they're going to look internally for some continued development of not only the obvious ones like Mayo, Rutschman, Holiday, but also even like a Westberg taking another step forward.
Yeah.
Cowser, it's got a lot of places he could take a step forward against left-handed pitching with guys on base. I think you could, and so I think that there are some internal improvements that they could make. Heston Kjerstad, at the time he got hurt last year, was one of their best looking hitters. Then he got hit in the head. That
Yeah.
kind of derailed his season. They could see improvement from him over the course of the season. It's not the sexiest thing, but I think that was always their plan moving forward. One area
That's
where they
ultimately
really
why you don't think they're that interested in Santander. You think they want to
correct.
really
I think that they want to give Kerstad
Kerstad a
a
chance.
real look, a real
Yeah.
chance. And I think the one area more than anything else that you could look at last year was their struggles against left-handed pitching. And that's why they brought in O'Neill.
Yeah.
And
And Sanchez.
yeah, and before the offseason, if you told me who fits what they really need based on 2024, O'Neill would have been one of the guys that I mentioned because he crushes left-handed pitching.
Yeah.
And with the Walls coming in, we'll see if he can help in that regard. He certainly has a track record of doing that when he's healthy, but he's got to stay on the field. He hasn't had any major injuries, but they've been enough to keep him off the field. And he's usually pretty productive when he's on the field.
That's going to do it for today. Ross, you and I are going to get together in early February. Not that we won't be back on before that if events warrant, but John Miller has a new book out, not the ex-Oriole announcer and
Right.
not the car dealer in Baltimore, John Miller, but John Miller, who's written for a long time for the Wall Street Journal, has come out with a book that's due to hit the stands and the bookstores in early March called The Last Manager, about Earl Weaver. And Ross and I are going to talk to him and interview him and talk about the book and compare some notes about Earl. And I'm looking forward to that. But
That
it's
should be
great.
a lot of fun. That should be
It's
good.
great. It's great to see your face, Luke. You always great to see you, and I'll talk to you over the next couple of days. All right. We want to thank the Costas Inn for being a part of bringing this to you, and they will continue to be with us throughout the year. All right. Happy New Year, everybody. We hope you had good, peaceful holidays, and we'll talk to you real soon. Bye.